Hi, Karen Alari here, and my kitty Pootie is joining us today. So I have something a little different today. Today I'm going to be reviewing some acrylic paints from a company called Arteza. They're online and they're much less expensive alternative to the paints that I have been using. For you, those of you that don't know me, I have a YouTube channel where I post acrylic painting tutorials, and I also have a online school with longer, more full-length courses that you can take in learning to paint with acrylics. So I've been looking for a while. You know, I love the better quality paints. I use Golden brand paints generally, and I think that that's a great thing to do. But what I've been looking for is a less expensive alternative, especially for beginners, because you don't want a paint that is so inexpensive that it's frustrating and it's going to discourage you. But having your paints be so expensive that you worry about how much you're using or whether or not you're wasting the paint, that doesn't help you grow either, because as an artist you really want to just get in there, experiment, and paint lots of paintings, and that's how you grow as an artist. So I was really happy to have this company contact me and ask if I wanted to review some of their products. And they're not paying me to do it, so just so you know, this is an honest review of the products. So I chose to review this is Arteza brand. I'll put all the links down below in the video, but I chose to review it's a set of 12 acrylic paints. They call this their premium paints, and it comes in a nice little box like this, and you get 12 different colors in these little tubes that are 0.7, so about 3/4 of an ounce. So you get a nice combination of colors, and I'll list those colors below as well. And I chose these colors in this set particularly. They also have sets with lots and lots of colors, but that really gets in your way as a beginning artist. Especially, you want to limit the colors you're using and learn to mix your colors. Learn to see the colors and mix them with a more limited palette. And this is basically a warm and a cool of each of the primary colors, plus greens and a few of the earth tones. So the first thing I was worried about was these aren't exactly the colors that I use in my normal palette. So the first thing I did was do a color chart like this, and I compared the colors I use versus a similar color in the Arteza brand. And what this does, and I highly recommend this if you pick up this set of paints, to do this, even if you're not comparing it to another brand, what it does is help you understand how transparent or opaque the paints are, how they mix with white, what the colors are going to do. Because one thing, you can't necessarily go by the colors on, they have little color bands on each tube. So this is a phthalo blue, which is on the chart here, and I'll put up a chart for you on the side here so you can see this chart more clearly. But yeah, so you're gonna need to color swatch them, because the colors on the tubes aren't accurate to the colors that actually come out. So what I determined was that this is a completely usable set. You can definitely use these colors. I find them to be slightly less opaque. In other words, they don't cover quite as well. They probably have a little more medium in them than the paints I'm used to, and the pigments aren't quite as strong. But I don't think it's enough less to make it, I think it's a great option for the beginning painter, so that these paints are less than half of what the other paints are in cost. And I also chose this set because most of their paints come in sets, but these particular colors, they also sell in individual pouches, they call them, actually, not tubes. So you can replace them. And the first thing that I would say is get this set, but also get an extra pouch of titanium white, because you need more white than this. You generally are going to use twice or 3 times as much white as you do your other colors. So that's why I chose this set too. The colors are simple, basic, easily mixable, and you can replace the individual colors you use up. So that's important, because you don't want to have to buy a whole nother set to replace one color. Okay, here's our little color swatch close up so you can see what I did here. Uh, as you can see, I labeled all of the colors that I used, and I used an A for the Arteza color and a G for the golden color. And I've just used the colors that I use in my normal palette and then tried to compare them to an Arteza color, but also just to get an understanding of what these colors are and how they're going to mix with other colors. Oh, by the way, a little tip for you. When you're swatching out colors, it's much easier to use a palette knife than a brush, because it's easier to clean with a brush. You have to keep rinsing the brush, and it's harder to keep the colors clean and pure, and goes a lot faster with a palette knife. Anyway, so I started with Arteza uses a lemon yellow as their only like pure yellow, and it's a yellow that goes toward the cool. So in general, you know, this set is a split primary set. In other words, there's a cool and a warm of each color. And this would be their cool yellow. In my palette, I use a warm yellow instead of a cool one. So I just was comparing those here. And the first thing, you know, yellow is generally a pretty transparent color, and it is it is in this case too, but you can see it, there's not a lot of difference. This is Hansa Yellow Light, and this is Hansa Yellow Medium, both golden colors. And the Hansa Yellow Light is a cool yellow, and you can see it's very comparable to the Arteza Lemon Yellow. Down below, I've mixed each color with a little bit of the white, the titanium white, with each brand. And the one thing that I notice overall with the Arteza titanium is that it is, again, not quite as opaque. So where you can see when I mixed these colors with white, they aren't as transparent as the Arteza brands mixed with white. But again, I really feel like it's a small enough difference that you can adjust to that. You end up using a little more white is what happens. So the warm yellow that they use is a yellow ochre, which is an earth tone, and this is what it looks like with white added. I use an Indian yellow, which, as you can see, is a more orange, brightly pigmented color. It's just my preference. I don't actually use any of the earth tones on my palette because they're very easy to mix by using other colors. Instead, I like to start with pure tones and then neutralize them as I go. But as a time-saving measure, and when you're starting out, this is a great color. And you'll see in the full-length video of the painting I did that it worked out really well, and the combination of those colors works out really well in the painting. So then they have a scarlet, which I'm comparing to my Naphtha Red Light, which is what I use on my palette. This one's a little more cool. You can see the pinks that they make with white added. Again, this swatching turned out to be, I really wanted to do it to see the pigment load and the covering capacity, but in the end it ended up just being me getting to know this set of colors and what they were, and what the colors were. So I use the quinacridone gold, again a more highly pigmented, more transparent color. I compared it here to their burnt sienna, but that's really apples and oranges in terms of color. Crimson red is another red that they have on the palette. So they have the scarlet red and the crimson red. The crimson I'm comparing to alizarin crimson, which is also one of my favorite colors in golden. But you can see it's a more of a purpley color. It's more blue than their crimson. Again, you can adjust to that once you understand what the colors are. This is their pale green, which is a warm green, a warm medium tone green, which I'm comparing to permanent green light in golden. I actually like this green color very much. It's got some more yellow in it, and it's great for landscapes, of course, mixed with their yellow ochre and different colors to create the different greens. And the little painting I did has quite a few greens in it. So this is their phthalo greens. This is the Arteza phthalo green and the golden phthalo green, and this is the yellow version of the golden phthalo green. They also have a blue version. So, and this one is more blue. Their phthalo green worked great. I really liked it as a color, and it mixed well with the other pigments. Here's their ultramarine and the golden ultramarine, and mixed with white. Very similar there in tone. Here's their phthalo blue, and the phthalo blue I use on my palette, which is the green shade of phthalo blue. And their phthalo blue here I think is more towards a red shade, but again, this is a really nice color, a nice pigment load to it, and I enjoyed working with their phthalo blue. Here's a burnt umber, which I didn't compare to anything because I don't keep anything like that on my palette. Again, I like to mix my browns. Here's Mars Black in the two colors. You can see that the golden Mars Black has a good amount more pigment load. You can see how much more opaque it is than their Mars Black, but I never used this Mars Black. I don't use black on my palette at all, so that wasn't too much of a concern for me in this set. Then I did some mixes because, of course, they don't have orange or purple in the set. If I had one suggestion for them, it would probably be to drop one of the earth colors and add a nice purple color, because it's tough to mix a nice bright purple. I tried here with this is their phthalo blue and their scarlet. This is their ultramarine blue and their scarlet. So those are a couple of options as compared to the golden mixes of similar things. But again, I got some nice purples, and I put some purples in the paintings, so you know they are pretty neutral. So you'd have to really work with that in terms of getting a bright purple. So, and these are the oranges, again, scarlet with their lemon. This is crimson with their lemon. And then here's the golden brands, Naphthol red and Hansa yellow. And this is a vat orange that I use on my palette, which is an orange straight from the tube, because again, it's sometimes hard to get those secondary colors in a bright enough tone, especially if you're doing flowers and other things like that. But it didn't compare that badly. It's not that far off. And in general, when I use these rich tube colors, I generally have to neutralize them a little bit because they are a little bit too bright straight from the tube. And then trying to get a warmer yellow, so using their lemon yellow and adding a little bit of scarlet here, and then a little less scarlet here, to just play with some different things that I might be able to get with mixing their crimsons, their reds with lemons in different ways to kind of warm up that yellow a little bit, which was just kind of the only really concern I had, was a warm yellow and an orange and a purple. But I think for 98% of the things you do, and especially when you're starting out, works just fine, and you can always, move to another brand to get a single tube of purple that's a little more bright. So that was kind of a long review there, but please do swatch the colors yourself so that you can get used to them and comfortable with the colors and how they blend together. Okay, thanks. So after doing the color chart, which I talked about already, I decided that the best way to do a review was to do an actual painting. So I painted this little painting with, using the Arteza brand paints. It's a painting that I'd done plein air a number of years ago in Golden brand paint, so I knew what the differences were going to be, and I could compare the differences between the paints more easily, both the colors I could get and the way that the paint itself moved on the canvas. So I'll post a few little clips of the painting that I did, but in a separate video you'll be able to find the full-length tutorial of me painting this painting for you. So regardless of what brand paint you're using, you could follow along on that little tutorial to learn how to paint that little image. Okay, so here's a couple little excerpts from the full-length video. And as you can see in this video, we'll show you from the very beginning how to paint this little image. On screen you can see the Arteza paints all laid out on my palette. It's a Masterson Stay Wet palette to keep them nice and moist through the painting time. And we step right through this little painting, and I'll show you how those paints are working, how they're mixing, how they're blending. And as you can see, they're going down easily on the canvas, and I'm not having any troubles with them. The layering is working great with them. You know, that's the key with painting with acrylics, is being able to come back over what you've done and paint in a new layer, whether it's light over dark or dark over light. The paint's manipulated well with this little liner brush that I like to use to create grasses and stems of the little flowers in the painting. So you can see that they worked quite well. The video is a little over an hour long, as I said, and I'll be talking a lot more about the paints, but also just about painting this little landscape and how to do that, how to compose it, how to work with your paints to create this sort of impressionistic image of a little path through the park. I was able to get some nice yellows in light and sunshine and create some beautiful grays for blending into our shadow colors. And I really enjoyed this little painting. I hope you join me to paint this little painting with me and try out these paints. And if not, using whatever paints you have, as you can see, you can learn to work with them, and so you're painting lots and lots of paintings, because that's how we learn, and that's how we grow as an artist. Getting in some final touches with some nice thick paint there. You can see I was able to get some thick layers at the end, which is important to be able to do to create those brush strokes and the texture that you're looking for. So that's a little preview of the full-length video. So the other thing also that I was reviewing beyond the paints was these canvases. They're economy cotton canvas. I used an 8x10, and it's just a stretch canvas, 5/8 of an inch deep, and it worked really well. It worked really comparable to the brands I have been using, and it came in this nice set of 12 of them, I believe. Yeah, 8x10. So prices are great, quality's good, they're pre-gessoed. It's a medium cotton canvas, which is what I use for landscape painting, because it has a bumpy texture to it that I like with landscape painting. It helps to get those kind of textures that you want in landscapes. If you wanted it smoother, you could add another layer or two of gesso, and you could get something smooth enough for portraits or a more smooth style that you might want to use. So that's it for this little critique of Arteza brand paints in terms of just showing you them and talking about them. But do check in on my full-length video where I'll be using these paints and talking about them more to create this little landscape scene for you. And there'll be a link below in the description, so if you want to purchase these paints, you can do that. I do recommend them for beginners and even more advanced students. I really didn't have much trouble with them. The only issue I had was, again, with a little bit with the intensity of the pigment and the covering power of them. But the beautiful thing about acrylics and why I love them so much is that just means you do another layer of paint and then you have the coverage you need. And then using the less expensive paints, you're freed up to experiment and try new things and paint lots and lots of paintings. If you're a beginner, your goal should be 100 paintings. You need to just paint lots and lots of paintings, and using these lower priced products is going to help you get there without worrying about it and being too much of a strain on your pocketbook. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.